Greetings gamers, my name is Anto, and today I want to run you through how I run single monster encounters that don't suck using a recent dragon example from my campaign. This video is sponsored by Chepeku, more on them later. So, my current campaign is pretty sandboxy, and my players recently said to me that they wanted to fight a big monster and earn some money. So I put together an adventure where they were hired by the local government to slay a dragon. Classic fantasy plot hook, right? This was an adult blue dragon, and my party are currently level 12, so by the 2024 rules, this was a slightly above moderate difficulty encounter, and by the 2014 rules, it would be somewhere between hard and deadly. I've talked before about how against single foes, I prefer to build encounters that skew on the more difficult end of the CR/XP spectrum because it helps offset a lot of the problems that come from single monster combats. So let's walk through the challenges, the setup, and the execution of the encounter, and hopefully by the end of the video you'll see how running solo monsters is something that can still be a dynamic and engaging combat for the players. Part 1, the challenges. There are two big challenges when it comes to running a solo monster as an encounter. The first is action economy. The players typically outnumber the monster and get more actions than them. And the second is the player character's ability to go Nova, meaning use every ability they have without worry. To deal with the problem of action economy, that's what legendary actions are for, allowing the monster to act outside of its turn. If you're using a monster without legendary actions, then you still need a way to disrupt the player action economy and prevent them from just surrounding the monster and hitting it, which means giving it an ability to disengage as a bonus action, allowing it to fly or burrow safely between its turns, or giving it the option to turn invisible or teleport. When it comes to dealing with players going Nova, that's actually something I talked about in last year's Monster Week video, which you can check out up here. And the way I get around this is by using phased combats. The idea behind this is that we put multiple combats into one staged combat and have like a whole day's worth of combat budget in what, from the player's perspective, is one combat.
Well, that's cheating.
So rather than going straight into our solo monster fight, we're going to chain several of our days worth of encounters together into one longer fight with the aim to drain PC health and resources before getting to the main event. Now, I usually like to approach this with a bait and switch. The bait is our opening portion of the encounter and is designed purely to spend player resources. This might mean putting a cluster of weak enemies in front of the players to bait the wizard into casting Fireball, or positioning guards at an entrance to encourage the group to use invisibility or other utility spells. The goal here is to lure the PCs into the switch, which is where we suddenly reveal there are either a lot more enemies than they're expecting or more large enemies than they're expecting. This usually puts them onto the back foot as the metaphorical walls start closing in, and then they start burning bigger resources to deal with these threats that are pressing in around them. Then, just as they finish off that last monster from the switch, that's when we bring out our solo monster and our real battle begins. Quick side here to say that this is a very combat heavy approach, and if your group isn't one that favors long drawn out combats, then this probably won't work for you. But if you have a group that really likes to get stuck in with combat, loves rolling their dice, kicking monster butt, this will be something that they should enjoy. Now, this means that they go into this last encounter without full health or resources, and it's going to make the whole thing much less of a walk in the park for them because they're not able to go Nova on the monster. Now, if you're enjoying this video, leave a like because it really does help me out. And if you want more GM tips, hit the subscribe button to get more videos just like this. Part 2, the setup. So now we know the broad approach for how to handle this, let's take a look at how I implemented this for my blue dragon fight. As I said, the players had been hired to slay an adult blue dragon which had made its lair in an island fort and was plaguing the coastline for miles around. I knew I didn't want to go right into the fight with the dragon and wanted to deplete some of their resources, so I garrisoned the fort with blue kobolds in service to the dragon. At level 12, these weren't going to be much of a threat for our players, but thanks to their pack tactics and with enough of them, they'd be able to chip away at the PC's health while consuming their resources. But kobolds are hardly a narrative threat to a level 12 party, so we need a few extra tricks to help us along the way. First of all, maybe the kobolds use the defenses of the fort, things like cannons or ballista, to attack the players with some higher damage or area of effect type stuff. Then, to really ratchet up the tension, I wanted to telegraph the dragon's arrival. To do this, I grabbed the outline of a dragon in PNG and brought it into Foundry as a token, making it enormous. I'm talking like 30 squares, and lowered the opacity so it would look like the shadow of the dragon high above the encounter. The plan was to make the shadow smaller each turn to represent the dragon getting closer and encourage the players to burn more powerful resources to finish their fight with the kobolds quicker. But before we could dive into the session, I needed a map, which is where today's sponsor, Chepeku, comes in. Chepeku are the beloved makers of hand-drawn battle maps, and for years they've been bringing battle maps, animated scenes, and tokens to your gaming tables, and they've just introduced their new fantasy bundle, which allows you to get all three of those options for a reduced price. With Chepeku maps, you get thousands of VTT-ready battle maps, including lighting and walls for the likes of Foundry VTT, as well as animated versions. Chepeku scenes add ambience to your games with hand-drawn cinematics to set the stage for your encounters, and many of them are paired paired with locations in the battle maps for even more immersion. And Chepekku tokens grant you access to hundreds of ready-to-use tokens for VTT play, as well as a token builder allowing you to make near limitless numbers of tokens for your campaign. The Chepekku Fantasy Bundle allows you to get all of these elements at a reduced price, meaning you can get a complete immersive experience ready to go for your games easier than ever before. Check it out using the link in the description below, and thanks again to Chepekku for supporting the channel. The execution. So after heading to the Chepekku site and settling on the Tidal Isle Fort, I set up everything and began the session. As expected, the players took the bait, a lone kobold in the southern watchtower, who went running after ringing the alarm bell. They managed to dispatch this single kobold without any problems at all, but chasing after him meant they brought themselves into the open and within range of the cannons up on the wall, so they then had to advance on the fort itself under cannon fire while the kobolds peppered them from above with arrows. This is also where I put the shadow of the dragon onto the map to really start ramping up that tension. When they got inside the fort, they discovered there was a small army of kobolds in there with a variety of stat blocks from across third-party books, and the goal for this section was just resource depletion, draining health and spell slots, and making it so that the players would go into the fight with the dragon without all of their abilities. As the dragon's shadow got closer, the players used more and more of their resources to cut through the kobolds, and by the time the dragon arrived, they'd all taken a little bit of damage and used some of their daily resources, so now it was time for the main show. My big piece of advice here for folks running tier 3 and 4 D&D, and for running solo monsters, is that you need to be ruthless and use every ability that the monster has. I know a lot of folks don't like legendary resistances, and I agree that they're a crude mechanic, but they deal with a very real problem of players being able to shut a monster down before they get the chance to do anything cool, so you should be using them. So our dragon lands, and it immediately uses its big breath weapon attack, targeting the party paladin and the wizard. The paladin fails their save and takes more than 60 damage, and the wizard succeeds and takes only half damage, but that still nearly kills him because, well, he's a wizard. So right from the start, the party are on the back foot and they are sweating. The wizard casts greater invisibility to hide and get out of danger, and the paladin has to burn some resources to start healing. Then through the course of the fight, I kept the dragon up in the air wherever possible, only coming down to brutally target isolated characters before taking their single attack of opportunity to fly out of reach again. This meant that the two melee focused characters were seriously hamstrung, forced to use their much weaker ranged options. The rogue couldn't sneak attack effectively, and the two casters were having to carry the weight of the fight while trying not to draw too much aggression from the dragon. When you add into this the legendary actions that allow the blue dragon to turn invisible and move, this became a real cat and mouse fight where the players had their backs against the wall for the entire combat. And actually, this has broadly been my experience for most high-level D&D play. You'll always see comments from people talking about the exact party composition or spell selection, which will nullify any high-level monster within 1 or 2 turns. But in reality, things are always so much more messy than that. Wizards are usually preparing their spells for a wide variety of possibilities rather than a single monster. Someone won't have learned that key spell that will be clutch for that one particular combat, or the barbarian still won't be carrying a bow 2 years into the game. Combine that with a monster's legendary actions, interrupting players' plans. Like, seriously, never underestimate how much just moving a monster between their turns can throw a spanner in the works for the players, as well as legendary resistances shutting down the first few big spells the players throw out. And I've never had a high level 5e encounter where I've run the monster properly, where it hasn't felt dynamic and suitably epic. In the end, to defeat the blue dragon, our party sorcerer used Dimension Door to transport themselves and the paladin up into the sky above the dragon, and then they dropped the paladin like the payload from a bomber plane, and the paladin managed to crit smite the dragon to death, crashing it into the fort below. When the dust settled, about 3/4 of the players were close to going down, and they'd burned through almost all of their resources, and all of the players felt that they'd had that suitably epic fight, especially when they discovered the dragon's hoard and got a ton of loot out of it. So there we go, some quick tips for making your high level or solo monster combats more dynamic and engaging. The secret is it's not actually a solo encounter, it's just a solo ending to more of an encounter. If you have any tips for running solo monsters, I'd love to hear them below. And if you want to keep watching, check out this video where I fixed the 2024 monster manual by making a quick monster builder that WotC forgot to include in the book. But until next time, happy gaming.